Today, let's talk about one word that strikes fear into the heart of every SaaS founder. I am talking about churn. Ooh. Seriously, churn is a topic that is really talked about in SaaS because of how fundamental it is to business growth, right? And that is why it needs to be seriously tackled. Tackled so much it becomes negative churn, right? And that is why today I am going to show you 9 different ways as a CSM, a customer success manager, I am able to kill churn and achieve negative churn, right? So let's get right into it. Now, the number one way to kill churn is something that I learned from World War II. I know that sounds somehow, but let me tell you. You see, during the World War, the British Royal Army, Air Force, right? They wanted to reduce the number of planes that were getting shot down, during the war. And in my own case, that is like churned customers, right? And so they analyzed the bombers that returned from the mission, right? And they mapped out the areas that got hit most with bullets, right? To them, their plan was that these were the weak spots and they should reinforce this, make this part stronger. However, somebody called Abraham Wald challenged this thinking. He was a statistician from Columbia University, right? He challenged this thinking and he told them that they're actually thinking about this thing in the wrong way. To Abraham Ward, it was like, if these parts in these planes, they got hit and the planes still make it back home, are those really the weak spots? But I mean, what about the parts that didn't get hit? Doesn't that mean that these parts that didn't get hit, the planes that never made it back home, they got hit in these parts? And that means these parts that didn't get it are actually the critical parts of the plane, right? Now, this thinking in that time it was crazy, right? And it turns out it was right. So the parts that didn't get it, they actually reinforced these parts, and it went on to save countless lives, right? Now, how does this connect to churn? Maybe you're already starting to see it. You see, when churn happens, right, most customer success managers, they focus and start to worry about things like, what went wrong? What did they stop doing? What did the customer not adopt and all that? All sort of, stuff like that. But here is the thing. You see, if there are other customers, right, who are experiencing the same thing, right, who ski the same steps that CSM think is leading to churn, but these customers are still staying with the business, right? You are still retaining them and they have good health scores. Doesn't that mean that maybe these things that you think are the cause of the churn are not really the only things you should be focusing on, right? What if you also focus on, these things that seem to be working well to retain these customers that are also experiencing these same things that you think are leading to churn, right? And it's not making these customers strong. What if, you focus on making these things stronger by asking questions like, what am I actually doing right with these people, right? What value are they seeing? Maybe you can ask, what part of the onboarding steps did they not miss, right? By asking this question, by looking at the questions that actually the customers that are actually staying, and not just the customers that are churning, you're able to know maybe some of the critical levels of your retention actually lie in these parts, right? In these parts of the customer that actually stay with you, right? And you can focus on making this thing stronger, doubling down on them. This is another way to look at churn from two different sides and ensure that you are tying up every loose ends. Do you now see what I'm trying to say there, right? So now, that is my number one way of killing churn. Now, when it comes to the number two way that I kill churn, that is having the ability to define my own metrics. I'm telling you, see, this is actually important. You see, most customer success metrics that come with all these CRM tools and customer success tools and so on, right? They are not really optimized enough to allow customer success professionals to be proactive, right? The metrics that they give you are things like health scores, usage frequency, satisfaction score, and so on, right? These metrics don't really tell you what is actually going on with the customer, right? Besides, most of these metrics are lagging, not leading, and you need leading metrics to be proactive. You get what I'm saying, right? So okay, let me give you an example. Let's say during onboarding, you want to assess stakeholder engagement, right? The people that are on the kickoff call. Maybe you want to know their engagement, so that you could spot potential blockers during the, that can they affect the time to value, or you want to spot potential early champions that you see that, okay, these people look like they're interested. They are not actually metrics that will help you track listing. You would have to define these metrics yourself. That is why one thing that I personally do as a CSM is to have an Excel spreadsheet, right? Where I personally define and track my own metrics that is tailored to the customer. And if the CRM tool allows for me to be able to create custom dashboards, I do that. Another thing also is that I also usually liaise with the product team, because the product team usually have a lot of useful metrics that actually go deep into the customer life cycle, right? So that is why having the ability to define your own metrics is really key in helping you to kill churn. That is the second way. Now let's move to the third way I kill churn, and that is something that is actually very obvious, and that is ensuring that they are seeing value constantly. Obvious, is it not? Yeah, but you see, most CSFs actually understand what constant value means. For example, they create success plans that, you know, is static. Maybe they only created a success plan during the onboarding phase, and this success plan is not useful, right? It's not flexible to actually continue to work with the customers. They progress through their through their life cycle. That is a mistake. You should always be, aligning with the goals of the customer. Or, for example, some CSM think constant value is always checking in. Oh, I'm just checking in. They have no value. They have nothing. They're actually trying to, checking in for. They are just pissing off the customer, right? That's why I say that some CSM, they go about it the wrong way. Constant value is always making sure that you know the current priority of the customer at that particular moment, right? And you are present to help them achieve it as quick as possible. Listen, if you know about something called the just to be done framework, it's usually used by the product team to develop products that customers love. There's one way they define tools, right? They don't define software as amazing product. They define it as tools that customer hire to get jobs done. That is just basically what they see your software as. So you always want to ensure that you're helping them to get the job done. It's really important, and that's another way to kill churn. That's personally the third way I'm able to kill churn. So now let's move on to the fourth way I kill churn, and that is moving fast when a red flag is spotted and always following up. Man, I cannot overemphasize enough how important it is that you always have to reach out. Reach out when you notice that something is off as quick as possible. Now, of course, you first want to assess, based on what you can assess within your own internally, right? However, once you find out that you need to reach out to the customer, do so quick. Man, I'm telling you, it's really important. Reach out as quick as possible. And when you reach out, when you've already spotted what the problem is and all, and you've already you propose the solution, always follow up. Please and please never leave customers in the dark. That's one of the worst things you can do as a customer success manager. Never leave them in the dark. Always follow up. That constant communication is key to killing churn. So I hope you got that. That is the fourth way, and I'm able to kill churn. So let's move to the fifth way. The fifth way I kill churn is, now you see, this one is crucial, and honestly, I think it's more than just the job of a customer success manager. And that is integrating the product deeply into the customer's workflow or lifestyle, depending on what the product does. You see, you always want to make it a hassle, like something that you always want to make it filled with friction for the customer to switch to another tool. For example, let me give you something. You see, ChatGPT, right? One of the ways ChatGPT makes it hard for me to switch is that they've made their AI in such a way that it can learn about me, my personalities, right? And give me questions and answers based on the kind of person I am. Now, if I want to switch to another AI, the thought of the fact that this AI will probably not give me a question that is as aligned with me as ChatGPT, like it doesn't really know me the way ChatGPT does. You see how the friction, you see how it has started to become an hassle for me to switch. Now, this is actually important. It's one of the ways to create a moat around the product. And like I said, it's more than just the job of a CSM, but a CSM can also influence it. That is why one way you can influence that as a CSM is that especially when you're a high touch CSM, right? You want to always keep tabs on what your customers are doing. Maybe by following their socials or news updates, right? You want to use this to spot expansion opportunities so that you can, upsell, cross-sell them, on different ways they can integrate it more into their workflow. You can even monitor their usage, right? Maybe you liaise with the product team, right? And you compare, maybe there are certain features that similar companies to them are using, but they are not using. You can let them know about this, right? So, and let them see how they can leverage it to be more competitive and get more value from their product. You just want to always ensure that there are many ways you can go about this, right? But the most important thing is that you just only want to ensure that you want to make it hard for them to switch, right? You want to integrate your product so deeply, switching becomes a hassle and filled with so much friction. It is really important, and that's one way I kill churn. So now let's move to the sixth way I'm able to kill churn, and that is multi-threading. You see, one thing about customer success that isn't really talked about is the fact that you are kind of like a salesperson. To be honest, except he's more on a longer time frame, right, and less pressure than regular sales. That's why multi-threading is really important. Now, basically, what is multi-threading? Multi-threading is basically establishing network of connections in the company, especially when you are dealing with enterprises, right? You never want to have just one champion or one main point of contact. It's too risky, I'm telling you. It's too risky because they might leave or they might even stop liking your product. And once they do, man, it's game over. I'm telling you, that's why I say it's too risky. So you want to avoid that and ensure that you have at least 2 or 3 influential people who you can build a relationship with. It's really important, right? So this is how you're able to, this is why multi-threading is something you have to learn as a CSN, right? This is another reason why I say constant value is important, right? Because you always want to give these people reasons to support you. If they're not seeing any value, they won't support you. So you have to continue to ensure that they are seeing constant value. This is what will make multi-threading easy for you as a CSM, and that's how I make it easy for myself. So that's for the sixth way I'm able to kill churn. Now let's move to the seventh way. The seventh way I kill churn is to ensure that there are always helpful articles and guides on how to use the product better. Now, you see, I always say something that you see when it comes to product adoption comes from confidence in using your product to achieve their desired outcome. When a customer is confident that they can use your product to achieve what they want to achieve, why would they use it? They will adopt it. Now, here's one more thing. You see, confidence, that confidence that I'm talking about, it actually comes from knowledge, right? When you know something well, you are confident because you know it well, so you become confident in it. But then where does knowledge come from? Knowledge actually comes from clarity. When something is simple enough for you to understand, you are able to be knowledgeable at it, right? And when you are knowledgeable at it, you become confident at it. And when you are confident at it, you use it regularly. Can you see how it works back, right? That is why you want to ensure that the articles and guides, they are simple enough and valuable enough for the customer to consume. And you want to ensure that they're always consuming it, right? There are different ways it could be articles, it could be guides, it could be community, depending on how your company runs it. But you have to ensure that continue to make the customer become better at using your product, because that is what you lead to adoption and make churn less likely. So that is the seventh way I'm able to kill churn. Now let's move to the eighth way. The eighth way I reduce churn and kill it is by aligning internally and working cross-functionally in my own organization. You see, to me, this is still one of the biggest problems in customer success, actually. You see, the company's data is usually separate from each other, even though one data might be affecting how you do your own job as a CSM. Okay, let me give you an example. Let's say sales team, right? For example, the sales team, they can log incomplete data about the customer into the CRM. And you never get a chance to see it until they hand over the customer to you, right? That's when you start to realize that there are certain information they probably got, but they didn't log into it. And now you have to find ways to be asking the customer without pissing them off, because the sales team has already asked them, and now you want them to be repeating themselves again. See, you see where the problem comes. That is why we always want to ensure that I your own best, you do your best to try to, align internally. I know work with different teams that that influence the different stage of the customer experience. In fact, in one of my previous video, which I'll probably link, sorry around this video, right? I showed how I accidentally stumbled on our company's finance data, and it allowed me to know exactly by how much I needed to reduce churn, right, to help the company achieve more growth within their proposed timeline, right? This was a certain growth they were supposed to achieve, these are different metrics: ARR, MRR, operating expenses, EBIT, churn, and so on. But I never saw this data. It was until a glitch in our company system that someone landed on my laptop that that I saw, wow, that if I could just reduce churn by a certain percentage, I could exponentially make a difference in so many numbers of, that our company is tracking. So you see, and it's because of silo data I never knew. So that's why, it is really important. If you can have access to the different data that is really influential for you to perform your job well, it will really help you to control churn and kill it. And that is how I am able to kill churn, right? So if you're interested in watching the video, like I said, I'll link it somewhere above this video. So now, that is it about, aligning internally and working cross-functionally. So now let's move on to the last part, the last way I kill churn, and that is creating documentation on the customer. Listen, you always want to know all the relevant things about your customer. Things like their profile, what they are using your product for, feature requests, recorded calls. That is if the consent, of course, right? And so on. In fact, this is why I recommend that, as a CSM, you have to have Notes app, all these AI Notes app. There are different AI tools like Otter.ai, is it Firefiles or Fireflies? There's even Gemini, they are just different tools. It's really important. These things help you to collect data. They help you to record the call. They summarize it and they even give you valuable insights, right? Based on how you can improve the customer experience. It's really good. Creating documentation of the customer allows you to know, it even gives you things to talk about when it comes to crucial moments like renewals and maybe trying to foster a lot more long-term partnership like expansion and all that. So creating the documentation on the customer is the eighth way, and the ninth way for today that I am able to kill or create churn. All these 9 tips that I gave you today are part of the things that can help you to, kill churn if you implement them in your own strategy. And of course, these are not everything. Yeah, of course, there are a lot more, but these are just the ones that I have for today. And of course, I'll make more videos in subsequent, in the future on more ways I'm able to handle churn and I get achieve negative churn. So, that is it for today. Adios.